1986, a year of incredible firsts in NHRA championship drag racing. It was a year in which defending world champions Don Garlits, Kenny Bernstein, and Bob Glidden pushed technology to its limits in an effort to again dominate their classes. It was a year of record crowds, record purses, and speed records that exceeded the most optimistic predictions. Join us now as we review highlights from the 14 national events that led to the professional Winston World Championships.
The Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals in Pomona kicked off the 1986 season with nearly $500,000 up for grabs in the Winston Points Chase. This event marked the return to competition of Shirley Muldowney. Since her crash in 1984, she had been going through an extensive rehabilitation program, but at the Winter Nationals, she debuted a brand new car, qualified second, raced Don Garlits in the first round, and suffered an engine explosion that let Garlits go on for the win. Shirley, auspicious debut at the Winter Nationals, qualifying in the number 2 spot. From another angle, the engine exploded, the supercharger coming off of the car, marking an end to Shirley's comeback effort at this event. But Shirley quite happy with the performance of her brand new car at the start of this season. Fueling the 270-mile-an-hour fires was the record-shattering run in qualifying by Joe Amato, 269 miles an hour. The question at this event was who will be the first to go 270. One of the candidates for that honor, the new car of Gary Ormsby, debuting at this event, one of the most exotic streamliners ever. He pulled into the water box to do his burnout on the very first time down the racetrack and exploded the supercharger. A very disappointing day for Gary Ormsby as his streamliner out of competition at the Winter Nationals. Also during qualifying came this horrendous accident as Ron Correnti was struck from behind by the funny car of Dave Uhara. Uhara burst into flames, went down the racetrack without the body, but the parachute was out, and he brought it to a safe stop. Ron Correnti also was able to bring his damaged car to a safe stop. Neither driver was injured in this incident. In the first round of funny car racing, Ed McCulloch was in the near lane, Dale Paldy in the far lane. McCulloch had a horrendous engine explosion. The engine just disintegrating itself and taking the body with it. McCulloch did a masterful job of driving through this incident. When the engine exploded, he was seated dead center in that fireball. Both parachutes were out and he was able to bring the car to a safe stop. Ed McCulloch uninjured in the fire. In the semifinal round of funny cars, Kenny Bernstein raced against Tim Gross. Bernstein won 6 national event titles last season to carry him to the Winston World Championship. But in this race, it was some smoking tires that put Bernstein out of the race and gave the win to Tim Gross. In the semifinals of Top Fuel Racing, 24-year-old Darrell Gwynn raced against his fellow Floridian Don Garlits. Twice last season, they met in the final rounds, but this time the win went to Darrell Gwynn. Before, Garlits had dominated, but problems set in for him on this run, and Darrell Gwynn took the win to advance to the finals. In Pro Stock Eliminator, Warren Johnson drove his Oldsmobile to a fine qualifying position, while Frank Iaconio drove the Ford Thunderbird. As Johnson left the starting line, he got very close to the center line in the track, and Frank Iaconio in the upset win and taking the Winter Nationals Championship. It was getting dark in Pomona, California as the Top Fuel final came to the starting line. Darrell Gwynn on the far lane, while Connie Coletta occupied the near lane. A green light start for both drivers, and Darrell Gwynn instantly pulled to a car length lead, extended it at the finish, and Darrell Gwynn won the Winter Nationals at Pomona, California.
Very much, Steve. Them runner-ups, I tell you, they just don't cut it. It's nothing like a win. I'm here to tell you, this is nothing like I've ever experienced. I've won 10 national events in the alcohol car, but the king of the sport, Top Fuel, here we are.
It was a very happy Gwynn family as Darrell Gwynn took his first ever Top Fuel event victory at the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals. One race remained. John Force was looking for his first ever national event win, while Tim Gross was looking to win his second. With this event, Force had been in the final round of an NHRA national event 6 times and yet to win one. Force in the near lane, Tim Gross in the far lane. As they left the starting line, Gross pulled a slight advantage over Force and held on as he crossed the finish line, winning by about a car length. Gross had an elapsed time of 5.69 seconds at a speed of 236 miles an hour, and it was an exciting ride. As he neared the finish line, Gross began to have clutch problems, and lots of sparks began coming out from underneath that car, but he held on to win the race.
3 rather unlikely points leaders at the conclusion of the Winter Nationals. But consider that only once in 10 years have the 3 Pomona champions gone on to become world champions. Back in '78 with Kelly Brown, Don Prudhomme, and Bob Glidden.
The NHRA championship season then moved to Gainesville, Florida for the Motorcraft Gator Nationals, and the talk of this event was a brand new car debuted by Big Daddy Don Garlits. With a canopy over the driver's cockpit and an aerodynamic front end piece designed, as Big Daddy put it, to help him cut through the air, this car used 13-inch wheels with Kevlar belts for tires, designed to get the front end as low as possible and to reduce the frontal area. Darrell Gwynn in qualifying had a bit of a problem when an engine explosion at the finish line burst into a big ball of flame, the supercharger letting go, and for Miami, Florida's Darrell Gwynn, it was a trouble-plagued qualifying session. In Funny Car Eliminator, Tom McEwen and Kenny Bernstein had one of those picture-perfect races with Tom McEwen squeaking by for the win. McEwen adding Bill Schultz as his crew chief at the start of this season, and his abilities at tuning that car certainly paid off in this semifinal run against the world champion Kenny Bernstein. McEwen in the far lane, Bernstein in the near lane, and at the finish line by a matter of inches, Tom McEwen won this race. In the semifinals of Top Fuel Eliminator, it was the reigning world champion, Don Garlits of nearby Ocala, Florida, racing against a man who brought a lot of credentials into championship drag racing from another professional sport, NFL football, Dan Pastorini. Garlits got the advantage off the starting line, and what turned out to be one of the best runs ever in drag racing history, Don Garlits became the first man over 270 miles an hour when he ran 272 at 5.40 seconds. This was the quickest side-by-side run ever, as Pastorini had an elapsed time of 5.49 seconds. It was a tough weekend for Pastorini. In the first round, he used a whole shot to defeat Shirley Muldowney, but in this round, the semifinals, it was not to be. Don Garlits, the first man over 272 miles an hour. One of the problems Garlits faced all weekend long was the front belt on his streamlined dragster. They kept coming off at speed.
You punched a hole in the air, you drive right through it. 272.
Oh my God, too fast for the record.
Too fast for those bands on those rear wheels.
Yeah, we got to have some real tires up on the front of this thing.
You know, I heard you say to your crew, I'm not going to try the 270. That's over with for this race. There it was.
Well, it's just running good. You know, you can't hardly help yourself. You basically tune, and we were taking nitro out of it. It's just that it's so slick.
The concept obviously works.
Yes, it's the design of the future. There's no question about it. We'll have the tire thing fixed. We've already got tires. We got some little airplane tires that's going to do the job just nice.
The finals in Pro Stock Eliminator found Butch Leal in the near lane racing against the Pontiac Firebird of Don Campanello. This marked the first final round appearance for Campanello in Pro Stock, while Butch Leal had several national event wins to his credit. Campanello was the surprise of this Motorcraft Gator Nationals, as he qualified with a 7.50 second elapsed time, the third quickest in Pro Stock history, but he did not need it in the final as Butch Leal red-lighted.
congratulations. For a guy who was going to go home yesterday, are you glad you stayed?
Got me on the spot now.
You had a lot of motor trouble, but you came through.
Oh, yeah. Changed 3 engines. We had a lot of problems all through the week. You know, we only made 1 qualifying run. But when the luck is with you, it's just there.
Well, congratulations. The biggest day in your drag racing career.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you.
Don Campanella, the upset winner of Pro Stock.
The final round of Funny Car Eliminator found 2 longtime veterans on the starting line. Ed McCulloch against Tom McEwen. But problems set in for Tom McEwen. As they attempted to start the nitro-burning engine, a head gasket pushed out, forcing McEwen to abort the run and gave the win automatically on a bye run to Ed McCulloch. He recorded an 11.25-second elapsed time, the slowest winning run ever in Funny Car history. Our top fuel final found Don Garlits, much to the delight of the Florida fans, against Michigander Dick LaHaye. In addition to trying to defeat the defending event champion Dick LaHaye, Garlits was also looking for a backup run to his 272-mile-an-hour charge. LaHaye exploded an engine. Garlits won the race, but did not back up his record. He ran 5.50 seconds at a speed of 268 miles an hour. A thrilling ride for Dick LaHaye. He was uninjured in the explosion.
The hometown crowd, everything went right, the record, the whole deal.
Yeah, what did we turn?
Not quite enough to back up the record, but believe me, everyone acknowledges you were the first to go 270.
Really, it's been quite a day.
And I noticed there's some scars on the canopy there.
It's nice to have that there. A piece of that belt came back, or the fiberglass, and hit it pretty hard.
I have a feeling that's the last time we'll see the belts on the front end of this car.
You can bet on that.
Well, after Gainesville, the Winston points board started to look a lot like 1985. Don Garlits and Kenny Bernstein on top in their categories. Butch Leal will 2 semifinal appearances, and the yet young season put him in command.
Located just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, Atlanta Dragway hosted the Castrol GTX Nationwide Southern Nationals. And the factory hot rods, the Pro Stockers, provided a lot of excitement. The reigning world champion Bob Glidden met Butch Leal in the semifinals. Glidden in the far lane, while Leal occupied the near lane of the racetrack. The start of the season had not been particularly good for Bob and Etta Glidden, but in this race, it was a close match against Butch Leal. They left the starting line together. Glidden got to the finish line first, and then problems set in. The car went out of control, rode up on top of the guardrail, and overturned numerous times. For the first time, Bob Glidden was using a funny car-style roll cage inside his Ford Thunderbird, and it probably saved his life. As the NHRA safety safari rolled onto the accident scene on the starting line, Etta Glidden was comforted by Arlene Johnson, wife of W.J. Warren Johnson, a fellow Pro Stock racer. As the crews converged on the race car, Bob Glidden emerged unhurt. After that horrendous accident, Bob Glidden was able to extricate himself from the car and literally walk away. It was when he crossed the finish line that disaster struck. Glidden reassured his son Billy that he was unhurt.
Bob, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Boy, that's a miracle to get out of that one.
All I can do is thank the chassis builder, Jerry Haas. You know, I don't know what happened. I felt the back of the car come up, and it went over, and I just put my arms around my head, and I was just in there riding along.
I hope Etta knows that you're okay.
I'm sure she does by now. I'm waiting for her to get down here. She'll surely be here before long.
Again, glad to see that you're okay. That just happened instantly.
I don't know exactly what happened.
While Glidden may have been confused about what caused the accident, he did have presence of mind as soon as he realized he was unhurt to throw a jacket over the intake manifold on the engine of his race car, hiding some of his speed secrets. His wife Etta arrived on the scene and also received the reassurance that he was uninjured. Since Glidden crashed after winning the race, that means he was advanced into the final round, but obviously unable to make the call. Thus, the final pair in the semifinal round was actually the final round of the Southern Nationals. It was the Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson against the Camaro of Bruce Allen, and Warren Johnson dominated to take the win not only of the semifinal round, but the Pro Stock Championship. In Top Fuel semifinals, Dan Pastorini raced against Bill Mullins, driving for John Kerry. Both drivers smoked the tires. Pastorini recovered first and won the race by inches. That advanced him into his first ever NHRA final round appearance. In the other semifinal pair, it was Don Garlitz against the new car of Gene Snow. Snow in the near lane got the advantage over Garlitz. He held on for the win by a car length at the finish, and that set up the first ever All-Texas Finals, Pastorini against Snow. In the finals of Funny Car Eliminator, Ed McCulloch raced against Columbus, Ohio's Jim Head. The two cars left the starting line together, but at the finish line, Ed McCulloch won by just a couple of inches, marking back-to-back victories for Ed McCulloch in Funny Car Eliminator. It was the hole shot, or leaving the starting line first, that paid off for the veteran McCulloch. He had 0.02 of a second advantage over his opponent Jim Head, and that paid off at the finish line because both cars ran identical elapsed time of 6 seconds flat, McCulloch winning it by less than a foot. In the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator, Gene Snow was driving his brand new car while his opponent, Dan Pastorini, the former NFL quarterback, was driving a car that was previously owned and driven by Gene Snow. Pastorini in his first final round appearance ever, while Gene Snow several times a national event champion, all of those wins coming previously in his funny car career. A close race, but it was Pastorini pulling it out at the finish and winning his first NHRA National Event Championship at over 256 miles an hour.
It was your day, my friend.
I'm telling you, I'm so excited. This is better than winning any Super Bowl. It's better than any experience I've ever had in my life. I'd just like to thank all the people that have helped us out this weekend. I'd like to thank Larry and Glenda Enderle for helping us out financially. John Wallace with the truck registrations, Kendall Oil, my crew chief, Donnie Couch did a wonderful job. I'm just so happy. I don't know what to say.
Dan was even more elated when he found out his performance had moved him up to the second spot in Top Fuel points. Ed McCulloch still pinching himself after back-to-back victories. He now had the Winston lead. And in Pro Stock, Warren Johnson, the Oldsmobile, making his move.
And the NHRA National Event Series made its move to State Capitol Dragway near Baton Rouge, Louisiana for the Citgo Cajun Nationals. In final rounds that were delayed one day due to rain, in Pro Stock, Warren Johnson took his Oldsmobile to the starting line against the Pontiac of Butch Leal. Another red light start in this 1986 season for Butch Leal. That gave the win automatically to Warren Johnson. Bob Glidden returned to racing at this event and went out in round number 2, losing to Reed Wisnett.
He red lighted, which I felt he would because, he had a pretty good race up to this round. And he gets a little nervous in the final round. He's had a propensity for red lighting, and he was so early. I saw his red light before I left. So I was probably a little bit late on the thing, and it shook real bad. So it's fortunate to have a red light because I would assume he would have probably laid on a pretty decent run.
History was made in the final round of Top Fuel Eliminator at the Cajun Nationals as the two streamliners met on the starting line. Gary Ormsby debuted his car earlier this year and had lots of problems at the Winter Nationals. Don Garlitz debuted his car at the Gator Nationals and ran over 270 miles an hour. Ormsby used the more exotic streamlining effect, covered the rear wheels in an effort to push his car through the wind just a bit easier. Garlitz in the far lane, Ormsby in the near lane. This the final round at the Cajun Nationals. And it was total dominance by Don Garlitz, pulling away from Ormsby from the starting line to the finish line. Garlitz won the race at over 260 miles an hour and added to his points total in his quest for another Winston World Championship. The final of Funny Car Eliminator found Billy Meyer against Tom McEwen. McEwen in the second final round of this season. He's only won 2 national events in a career that is dated back some 30 years, that in 1973 at the Super Nationals and the 1978 Nationals. This year he added the Cajun Nationals title to his credit. The Winston World Champion, Kenny Bernstein, had problems at the Cajun Nationals. He lost in round number 1 to Johnny West.
After the Cajuns, no change among the points leaders. You really had to look beyond these names. Kenny Bernstein struggling along in 5th place in Funny Car. Bob Glidden only 4th in Pro Stock.
National Trail Raceway, just outside of Columbus, Ohio, the home of the 1986 Budweiser Spring Nationals. One of the shorter racetracks on this circuit. Just off the end of the racetrack, there's a road and a house. And Gary Phillips came down the racetrack on fire and out of control in Funny Car qualifying. He went through the sand trap, through the fence at the end of the racetrack, across the road, and ended up in the farmer's front yard. Gary Phillips was not injured in the incident. The National Hot Rod Association worked in cooperation with the local law enforcement officials to block traffic on that road during the qualifying sessions of Top Fuel and Funny Car, and the reasons why are extremely obvious, as Phillips used every bit of the racetrack, the sand trap, the road, and the farmer's front yard to bring the car to a halt. The finals of Pro Stock Eliminator found a rematch of the race at Baton Rouge. It was Warren Johnson in the Oldsmobile in the far lane against the Pontiac Firebird of Butch Leal. Leal red-lighted at Baton Rouge. This time it was Warren Johnson's turn to pull the same stunt. He left the starting line too soon and gave the win to the hometown favorite, Butch Leal.
Butch Leal, a little role reversal. He red-lighted this time.
Well, we're pretty good competitors, you know, and this, Steve, I don't know hardly what to say. He returned the favor, I would say, and it's about time we got in the winner's circle for everybody. We're here at hometown, and this Castro Nationwide's car did it, and all the guys at the shop deserve all the credit. I'm just in here driving, that's all.
2 world champions met in the final of Funny Car Eliminator at the Budweiser Spring Nationals. Mark Oswald at the wheel of the Candies and Hughes car was in the near lane. He won the world champion title in 1984. But Kenny Bernstein in the far lane took it away from him in 1985. At the Spring Nationals, though, Mark Oswald gave car owner Paul Candies his first victory since the North Star Nationals in 1984. It had been a long time coming for the Candies and Hughes team, and they won decisively over the reigning world champion. It was a slight hole shot going to Kenny Bernstein, but the performance advantage went to Mark Oswald by some 0.04 of a second. That was just enough to put the Candies and Hughes car out in front at the finish line. The champion of the Budweiser Spring Nationals, Mark Oswald. The Top Fuel final found Joe Amato, the 1984 world champion, against Connie Coletta. The amazing story of this '86 Spring Nationals was the performance of Coletta. he had his share of problems. It was in qualifying that Coletta had one of the most massive engine explosions one could ever imagine. The huge fireball indicated total engine destruction. That meant Coletta and his crew had lots of work to do. Not only did they have to replace this engine, but they had to bring its performance level up to the standards that Coletta had established in qualifying. It was a disappointing moment for Connie Coletta, but he and his crew overcame it and brought themselves into the finals to face Joe Amato. Top Fuel Racing was one of upsets. In the first round at the Spring Nationals, Dan Pastorini continued his remarkable rookie season by defeating Don Garlitz. In the finals, Connie Coletta had an easy go as Joe Amato broke on the starting line, and Coletta was the Spring Nationals champion. Even though Coletta had won the race, he was still confronted with the short racetrack. He brought the car to a bouncing stop, the front wheels in the sand trap. No damage was done to the car, and Coletta climbed out the victor. On the starting line, Joe Amato climbed out of his car to receive the condolences of competition director Steve Gibbs.
Boy, and the motor clean and dry after all of those problems in qualifying. Who'd have thought?
Who knows about this game? It'll make you humble sometimes.
Even Don Garlitz had a piece of that humble pie in round one, but held on to the points lead. In Funny Car, the latest in the season that John Force had ever led the standings, Pro Stock, well, Warren Johnson starting to feel some heat from Butch Leal.
The only NHRA national event held outside the United States, the Molson Grand Nationals at San Air Raceway near Montreal, Canada. Dick LaHaye and Shirley Muldowney made up a pair of the semifinal round of Top Fuel Eliminator. They say lightning never strikes twice in the same place, but it almost happened at the Molson Grand Nationals. Shirley Muldowney in round number 2 was racing against Hank Endres when an engine exploded. 2 years ago, a front tire came off, wrapped itself around the steering mechanism, throwing Shirley's car out of control into a ditch, causing her severe injury. This time, with a brilliant driving job, she brought the car to a safe stop. She was uninjured, but the engine itself received serious damage. They completely replaced the motor, a tremendous amount of work by Shirley and her crew to get the car ready. They were aided by a rain delay, and hundreds of spectators looked on as the crew rebuilt the car to get it ready for the race against Dick LaHaye in the semifinals. Going up in smoke off the starting line was Shirley Muldowney. That gave away her chance for the win. Another engine explosion, and a lot of parts were strewn across the racetrack, but Dick LaHaye moved into the finals. In Pro Stock Eliminator, Butch Leal won his second race in a row, defeating David Hutchins. Bob Glidden, still having his problems, went out in round number 2 at the hands of David Hutchins. Warren Johnson lost in the first round to Gordy Rivera. Kenny Bernstein made it to the final round of an NHRA national event for the second race in a row when he raced against John Force. John Force instantly went up in smoke off the starting line. Bernstein down to the finish line, and his first victory of the 1986 season. The reigning Winston World Champ trying to garner the points to repeat as world champion. The Top Fuel Eliminator final saw Darrell Gwynn against Dick LaHaye, and it was Darrell Gwynn by just a couple of feet winning for the second time this season over Dick LaHaye in a very close race.
Both Bernstein and Leal used their victories to leap into the lead of their respective categories. Gwynn, after dropping way down in the standings because of his slump, moved in third behind Joe Amato. LaHaye's runner-up points moved him into fifth.
Just a few hundred miles southeast of Montreal, Canada, lies Englishtown, New Jersey, and Raceway Park, the home of the Budweiser Summer Nationals. The 1986 event made history primarily on the basis of one run. Don Garlitz, attempting to back up his elapsed time record during qualifying, had his streamliner go into a gigantic wheel stand. It turned over backwards and came to rest on all four wheels. The engine was still running, and Garlitz drove it out of a cloud of tire smoke and brought it to a safe stop. A dramatic moment that the overflow crowd thoroughly enjoyed. Garlitz was not hurt, and as a result was unable to back up his record-shattering 5.34-second elapsed time. However, at this event, he did establish a new speed record of over 271 miles an hour. This definitely was the tallest wheel stand on record in championship drag racing.
Was very unusual. It, you know, it just, I knew it was gone. It got so high and then it wouldn't come back. You know, I backed out of it early, but it didn't make any difference. It was accelerating too hard, and even though the throttle was off and everything, it didn't make any difference. It caught wind underneath it.
Any chance of repairing this car?
No, his car can't race at this event. I'm not that crazy.
After his crash at the Southern Nationals in Atlanta, Georgia, Bob Glidden was returning to form by Summer Nationals time. He established a new elapsed time record for Pro Stocks at 7.44 seconds in his first round victory over Don Beverly. In Funny Car Eliminator, records were established at the Summer Nationals. It was Mark Oswald at the wheel of the Candice and Hughes car that recorded the quickest elapsed time in the history of Funny Car Eliminator at 5.56 seconds. Funny Car Eliminator also saw its share of problems. In the first round of elimination, Scott Coletta, driving the team car of his dad, Connie Coletta, exploded an engine, the body peeling back like the skin off of a banana. It was the parachute out, and Scott Coletta, 25 years old, brought the car to a safe stop. The finals of Pro Stock set history also. For the first time ever, a pair of team cars met in the finals. Two Oldsmobile Forenzas. Warren Johnson was racing against Don Coons. By just about a car length, Warren Johnson won this race and kept pace in the Winston World Championship points chase. Points leader Butch Leal fell to Warren Johnson in the semifinals, while Don Coons took on the new national record holder Bob Glidden, making a strong surge following his accident in Atlanta, and Don Coons won that semifinal race over Glidden. In the all-Oldsmobile final, though, it was Warren Johnson in the near lane that prevailed over Don Coons to become the Summer Nationals champion. The finals of Funny Car Eliminator, a rematch of the recent race in Montreal, Canada. In the near lane, it was Kenny Bernstein against John Force in the far lane. Force again went up in smoke. Kenny Bernstein, for the second race in a row, into the winner's circle with a 5.65 second elapsed time. His speed over 259 miles an hour. The Top Fuel final, again a rematch. Darrell Gwynn against Dick LaHaye. Gwynn ran 272 miles an hour in qualifying and thus became only the second person in history to travel a quarter of a mile at over 270 miles an hour. In the finals, it was from start to finish a victory for Darrell Gwynn. His time, a 5.44 second elapsed time. His speed was over 265 miles an hour.
With Big Daddy's early departure, Gwynn cut dramatically into his points lead. Among the funny cars, Mark Oswald moved into third behind Bernstein and Force, and Bob Glidden moved into third in Pro Stock because of those bonus record points and a strong semifinal appearance.
From the heat and humidity of New Jersey to the high country of Colorado, the Mile High Nationals at Vandermeer Speedway near Denver, Colorado, saw the tuning problems caused by altitude overcome by the Pro Stock champion, Bob Glidden. The man that crashed his car at the race earlier in the season at Atlanta, Georgia, came back with a vengeance at the Mile High Nationals as he took on Warren Johnson. It was the performance of the Thunderbird that prevailed over the Oldsmobile as Bob Glidden took his first win of the 1986 season and the 47th of his illustrious career. He ran over 174 miles an hour in the mile-high altitude of Bandimere Speedway.
We feel really well and really good about the way the cars run. I think we came to this race prepared to do what we did.
After the crash in Atlanta, you needed this. The whole team needed this to know you were still capable.
Yes, we did. It's been a long, long climb for us. I'm telling you, I'm really happy.
I can tell. Pro Stock champion, the Mile High Nationals, Bob Glidden.
If you happened to be standing in the turnaround area at the Mile High Nationals, you had your hand shaken by the Pro Stock champion, Bob Glidden. He was truly overjoyed with his big victory. The owner of one of the largest racing teams in drag racing, Larry Minor, 2 Top Fuel dragsters and 1 funny car, was in the finals against Eddie Hill. The Texan, who had laid out of the sport for a number of years to go drag boat racing, had problems with his car, was unable to get it back to the starting line. Minor had a single for the championship. Darrell Gwynn was the low qualifier at this event, but he lost in the first round, and Don Garlitz was racing his repaired Swamp Rat 30 after that moonshot at Englishtown. He also lost out in the early rounds of competition. Eddie Hill, while disappointed at his inability to match up against Larry Minor in the final, still received a tremendous round of applause from the crowd. The final in Funny Car Eliminator saw once again the pairing of Kenny Bernstein against Mark Oswald. These 2 cars were the class of the funny car field at the Mile High Nationals, and as they came to the starting line for the final round, Kenny Bernstein had the slight performance advantage over Mark Oswald. But at the finish line, where everything counts, it was Mark Oswald. After a tire-smoking middle-of-the-course charge, it was Oswald the winner for the second time this season over Kenny Bernstein. Oswald previously having won the Spring Nationals, also over Kenny Bernstein. This was one of those races that spectators will talk about for years to come. It was an almost dead-even start as the 2 cars blasted off the starting line. Oswald smoked the tires in the middle of the course, indicating lots of horsepower, and that proved to be true. As he approached the finish line, he pulled ahead of Bernstein and won the race.
No appreciable changes in the top fuel points, nor in funny car, but Mark Oswald served warning at Denver that he was coming after Kenny Bernstein and John Force. Warren Johnson back in the Pro Stock lead, even though defeated in the finals.
The Quaker State North Star Nationals was the next stop on the national event trail at Brainerd International Raceway near Brainerd, Minnesota. One of the most exciting occurrences of the 1986 season came in the first round of Funny Car Eliminator. Norm Day exploded an engine in his race against Tim Gross. Day's car crossed over in front of Gross, the parachute burning off. It went over into the grass and overturned. As the car rolled over, it apparently jammed the emergency escape hatch on top of the car, still burning fiercely, with Norm Day inside trying to get out of this car. The NHRA Safety Safari arrived on the scene, and so did fellow driver Tim Gross. Gross deciding that the best thing to do was try to kick in the side of the fiberglass body. Gross, along with the NHRA Safety Safari, got Norm Day out of the burning wreckage. The emergency medical technician on the scene immediately checking out Day as he experienced some minor burns around the hands as a result of this horrendous crash and resulting fire. Day was taken to a hospital, checked, and released, and was back at the racetrack the same day of this accident. This fire is a prime example of why NHRA requires in its safety rules and regulations a multi-layer fire suit, and fast action by the Safety Safari and fellow driver Tim Gross got Norm Day out of that car. In Pro Stock Eliminator, the final round found the Ford of Bob Glidden and the Chevrolet of Bruce Allen. Glidden left the starting line first. He had the performance advantage over Allen, and in doing so, won his 48th national event victory for his career, but most importantly, his second race in a row of this 1986 season, and the all-important points that go to the Pro Stock champion. In the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator, Don Garlits was scheduled to have raced Dick LaHaye. But problems set in for Dick LaHaye in his semifinal round win over Shirley Muldowney. Some driveline component failure prevented Dick LaHaye from making the final round. The crew worked diligently on the problem, but in the time allotted to prepare the car for the finals, they were unable to answer the call. Thus, Garlits had an easy go as the reigning world champion added to his points total with a 5.56 second elapsed time, 259-mile-an-hour charge across the finish line to carry him to the North Star Nationals title. This marked the third time this season that Dick LaHaye had made it to the final round, but this had to be the toughest loss of all.
You and Kim, you work in this car yourself. You don't use a lot of fancy air wrenches. You kind of have your own pace, and it bit you a little bit here.
Yes, it did. We had hurt one piston, and that enabled it. We had to take one cylinder head off, and normally we don't have to do that. It caught up with us here.
The Quaker State North Star Nationals Funny Car Final saw a rematch of the 1986 Gator Nationals Final as Tom McEwen raced Ed McCulloch. This race also saw a couple of upsets as Kenny Bernstein and John Force, both consistent performers throughout the year, went out in the first round. Mark Oswald went out in the semifinals, and Ed McCulloch went out in the finals. Tom McEwen won his second race of the season at the North Star Nationals.
You avenged that Gator Nationals final when Ed McCulloch got you when you couldn't start.
At Gainesville, we had a little problem on the starting line. He made a single, and he's a great competitor.
Sure.
The old men of the sport.
Don Garlits coming in to congratulate Tom McEwen.
This is his 3,085 national win and my second.
And even more Top Fuel points came Big Daddy's way. In Funny Car, Kenny Bernstein opened the door, but neither John Force nor Mark Oswald were able to drive through it. Warren Johnson's early departure left him on top of the points list, but with Glidden closing in.
The biggest race of the year was on tap next, the U.S. Nationals, the granddaddy of them all at Indianapolis Raceway Park near Indianapolis, Indiana. And the largest crowd in the history of the U.S. Nationals had filled this massive complex to overflowing. They came to see records established, and they were not disappointed. The quickest and fastest funny car run in the history of drag racing came from Kenny Bernstein when he recorded 5.50 seconds at over 271 miles an hour in qualifying. He was never close again to those numbers, and as a result, there was no record established, but they saw the quickest and fastest. In Pro Stock, the fastest Pro Stock run ever at over 190 miles an hour, that by the Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson. In the Pro Stock elapsed time category, Bob Glidden gave the Ford fans something to cheer about as he defeated Gordy Rivera and in the process established a new record at 7.37 seconds. Top Fuel fans were not to be disappointed either at the U.S. Nationals as Darrell Gwynn backed up the performances that he set at the Summer Nationals when he established a new elapsed time record at 5.34 seconds. The racing was close also. In the Big Bud Shootout, it boiled down to Mark Oswald and John Force, two of the most consistent performers of the season. On Sunday at the U.S. Nationals over Labor Day weekend, Mark Oswald won $30,000 as he won the Big Bud Shootout title. For Pro Stock racers, the race within a race came on Saturday as the Mr. Gasket Pro Stock Challenge saw Bruce Allen defeat Butch Leal in the finals to take home $15,000 in cash from the Mr. Gasket Company. In the semifinals of U.S. Nationals racing, it was Darrell Gwynn against Dick LaHaye in what resulted in the quickest side-by-side drag race in the history of the sport. LaHaye was in the far lane, Darrell Gwynn was in the near lane, And as they crossed the finish line with Darrell Gwynn in the lead, it was a 5.43-second elapsed time for Gwynn. LaHaye just a few feet behind at 5.45 seconds. The finals of Pro Stock Eliminator found once again the match of Ford versus Chevrolet, and once again the superlative career of Bob Glidden came to the forefront. For the 10th year in a row, Bob Glidden was in the finals of the U.S. Nationals. He overcame the starting line advantage that was gained by Bruce Allen and won his 7th title.
This was your 10th consecutive final round here. You didn't win them all, but most of them. Why one race you can be so successful?
I think we try a lot harder at this race. This week, we've been home every night, thrashing, trying to squeeze another hundredth or 200ths out, and boy, it paid off.
Got the record, everything.
I got the ET record. Warren ended up with a speed record, but that's okay. We gained on him.
Congratulations again.
That was the 3rd straight win of the 1986 season for Glidden. Both Butch Leal and Warren Johnson went out in the first round of racing. Mike Dunn was driving Joe Pisano's car in the finals of Funny Car Eliminator against Billy Meyer. No, you're not seeing wrong. It looks like Kenny Bernstein's car, and here is why. In qualifying, Billy Meyer exploded the Mustang body off of his race car. The crew spent a lot of hours working to get the car back into racing condition. Kenny Bernstein loaned him the spare body off of his own race car, and they were able to repair the vehicle after this horrendous explosion and put the car into competition, and Billy Meyer in the finals against Mike Dunn. Dunn went up in smoke. Then Billy Meyer broke something in the drivetrain. Dunn went on to be the surprise winner.
Lead change stance a couple of times, and that doesn't happen too often in a drag race.
Oh, yeah, that's when it's exciting, when you get them lead changes going down the track. It was a very good race. I got to give credit to Joe Pisano and Gary Slesher and the rest of the crew. They did a great job, and this is a lot. I like getting TV coverage this way better than the other way, let me tell you.
Mike Dunn having had a few accidents in his driving career. Darrell Gwynn and Don Garlits met in the finals of the 1986 U.S. Nationals. This was a rematch of the 1985 finals when Don Garlits won for the 2nd time in a row. This year, it was a repeat for Don Garlits, an incredible 3rd victory. Darrell Gwynn had to borrow a wing from Gary Beck after his broke in the semifinals. And for Gwynn, after having had the performance advantage throughout the event, a disappointment as Don Garlits, the veteran, prevailed once again, winning an unprecedented 8th U.S. Nationals title, this the 3rd in a row, and the quickest side-by-side drag race ever. Garlits 5:39, Darrell Gwynn losing oh so close 5:44.
You have seen a bona fide 20th century miracle here today.
In what way, Don?
Well, nothing was going right for us. Everything was wrong. And we didn't do anything to the car that should have caused it to just come around like that. All of a sudden, everything just fell into place. I mean, you saw the engine over there. You came over there before the 540. It just wasn't anything left. We were putting a clutch in it. We were putting all pistons, new heads. And then we just, everything just worked out. I mean, I'm stunned.
So was Darrell Gwynn, but the young man from Florida did move into the number 2 spot in Top Fuel. Kenny Bernstein held on in Funny Car, but Mark Oswald moved up to number 2, and Warren Johnson really feeling the heat from Bob Glidden. He was now number 2 after Indy.
Set in the rolling hills of eastern Pennsylvania, one of the most beautiful racetracks on the NHRA National Event Trail, Maple Grove Raceway hosted the Castrol GTX Keystone National. In the semifinal round of Funny Cars, Brad Tuttle had an exciting ride in his race against Kenny Bernstein. Tuttle did everything right as he left the starting line first. Bernstein's power seemed to take advantage at this point, but then Brad Tuttle went topless. That's right, the top blew off his Mustang body. He was able to keep the car under control and brought it to a stop, but looking more as a roadster or a convertible than the Mustang body. Brad Tuttle uninjured, but without a top on the car. It is a difficult enough task to drive a modern-day funny car. There are a number of levers and buttons that must be pushed to control not only the transmission, but also the fuel delivery system. You don't need to worry about the top coming off, but that's what happened to Brad Tuttle. The win by Bernstein advanced him into the finals once again for this 1986 season. One man that did not have to worry about all the levers and buttons was Don Beverly. He raced against Bruce Allen in the finals of Pro Stock Eliminator. Beverly made it to the finals for the first time in his short driving career, and his car has the shifter controlled by a computer. It automatically shifts as it heads down the racetrack, and Beverly upset Bruce Allen to win his first ever Pro Stock title, this coming at the Castrol GTX Keystone Nationals. Warren Johnson went out in the first round of competition, while Bob Glidden lost to Bruce Allen in the semifinals. But the big story at the Keystone Nationals was Don Beverly winning his first NHRA national event title as he pulled out a big victory over Bruce Allen.
You know, Bruce told me, he said, Beverly's a real calm guy. You're incredibly calm for what you've accomplished today.
Well, I tell you, it's maybe I haven't thought about it enough yet, but it's maybe it'll get to me in a little bit, but it was a lot of fun. And for my team, Randy Smith and Cliff Hughes and Boney and Mike and everybody, it's a real, we went this race last year, which we just got started, and it's, to go this far, it's really great.
So this is really the anniversary of your first year in Pro Stock, and what a way to celebrate it.
I appreciate that a whole bunch.
What a job this fella did.
Don Beverly, a new face in the winner's circle. For the third time this season, Mark Oswald and Kenny Bernstein did battle in the finals of Funny Car Eliminator. In the two previous events, Mark Oswald prevailed over the reigning world champion and current points leader. At the Keystone Nationals, it was to happen for the third time this 1986 season. Mark Oswald defeated the man that was in the points lead and continued in hot pursuit of Kenny Bernstein, trying to once again reclaim the Winston World Championship title that he held back in 1984. It is interesting to note that all three of Oswald's victories this season have come as he overpowered Bernstein. Bernstein, who is noted for his consistency and his ability to outdistance the competition, has found himself in second place 3 times this season, all 3 times to Oswald, and all 3 by superlative performances turned in by the Candies and Hughes team. The finals of Top Fuel Eliminator found Dick LaHaye racing once again against Don Garlitz. This time, though, LaHaye was able to make it to the starting line. If you will recall, it was at the North Star Nationals when mechanical problems kept him from racing against Garlitz. This was the 4th time this season that Dick LaHaye has used his consistency to make it to the finals. Here, he won. Dick LaHaye defeated Don Garlitz in the finals for his first win of 1986.
How many runners-up?
This is our 5th final round this season.
The first one you actually captured. Oh, it's got to be sweet.
Oh, I'm just tickled to death. I mean, Kim's got to be so happy, and, you know, and the Republic people and everything, we're just tickled to death.
LaHaye's win saw him replace Darrell Gwynn as second on the Top Fuel points list. Kenny Bernstein, he lost a little ground to Mark Oswald, and for the first time all season, defending world champion Bob Glidden was on top in Pro Stock.
Throughout the year, the attention of the drag racing world was focused on Dallas, Texas, and the new Texas Motorplex, built by funny car racer Billy Meyer to host the Chief Auto Parts Nationals. This track is unique in the fact that it is concrete from starting line to finish line. That makes a difference.
Well, this surface is smoother than a baby's behind, far smoother than even the finest of asphalt compounds. Now, even a few years ago, a concrete quarter mile wasn't a practical situation because you had to have expansion joints every 30 or 40 feet. That would have made the track much too rough to race on. But this was built with what they call post-tension. Beneath the surface in both lanes, there are 3 giant cables that are stretched over 30,000 pounds of tension, and that is supposed to hold the whole thing together.
That concrete surface yielded some of the quickest elapsed times ever seen. Kenny Bernstein established a new national ET record at 5.54 seconds, but he also recorded the quickest time in history at 5.42. In Top Fuel Eliminator, a speed record was established by Darrell Gwynn, also an elapsed time record. 5.26 seconds, the first time any Top Fuel dragster has been in the 520s, and he ran over 278 miles an hour.
Well, I don't know what to say. I'll tell you what. I'd like to say, number one, this Bud's for you. We're going to announce our Budweiser sponsorship today if we set the record, and here we are. I'd like to thank everybody that's been involved with this car. Dale Armstrong, Kenny Bernstein, my family, all my friends. I can say anybody's name I want. Armstrong, Bernstein, anybody. They all helped me. Thank you very much.
While Darrell Gwynn celebrated his new elapsed time and speed records, it was time for the Candies and Hughes team and Mark Oswald to move into the record books. They established a new speed record for funny cars at over 268 miles an hour. As Oswald blasted through the traps at the record-shattering 268 miles an hour, the force of the air going over the Pontiac Trans Am body collapsed a couple of body supports. That, in turn, caused the body to literally break in half. Before the final rounds could be run at the Chief Nationals, one of those famed Texas thunderstorms swept across the Texas Motorplex. That, in turn, forced a delay into the nighttime hours, and the lights came on at the Motorplex on the finals in Funny Car Eliminator. Kenny Bernstein raced against Tom McEwen, but Bernstein's important race came in the semifinal round when he helped himself in his quest for a repeat world championship as he defeated Mark Oswald in the revered Candies and Hughes car. In the finals, it was Kenny Bernstein all the way. Elapsed time 5.54 seconds. His speed over 264 miles an hour. Tom McEwen ran into mechanical problems, and Bernstein easily won the race. In the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator, once again, it was the old man versus the kid. Don Garlitz against Darrell Gwynn, and Gwynn came into this finals the decided favorite. He had recorded elapsed times in the 520s with consistency. But the adage around drag racing is, don't count the old man out. And if you did at the Chief Nationals, you came up a loser, as did Darrell Gwynn. It was the performance in the final round by Don Garlitz that once again just staggered the 25-year-old Gwynn. Garlitz, with a 5.39 second elapsed time at over 268 miles an hour, won his 34th career victory. He has an amazing 84% average in final round appearances. In Pro Stock Eliminator, Bob Glidden was shooting for his 50th national event title. His wife and crew chief Etta watched from the far end of the racetrack as Bob Glidden in the Ford and Warren Johnson in the Oldsmobile rolled into the starting line beams. But this was one of those races that was to be decided on the starting line. Warren Johnson left too soon. Red light, disqualification, the 50th win to Bob Glidden.
Bob and Etta Glidden have won their 50th NHRA Pro Stock title. How do you feel, babe?
Great!
And more important than that, some points towards a world title, huh?
Yes, we feel really fortunate to be in this position right now after the year we've had.
And for Bob Glidden, it was a very fortunate occurrence that his opponent, Warren Johnson, left the red light on the starting line in the finals at the Chief Nationals, for he had engine problems. Glidden experienced a driveline failure that left him with only an 8.38 second elapsed time at 121 miles an hour, but it really doesn't matter. The win light came on in his lane, and Glidden, for the 50th time in his career, takes home an NHRA national event title.
After Texas, the leaderboard looked familiar. It was the same as it was at the end of the 1985 season. All three defending champs moving one step closer to repeating. They all now had the same goal, to ice the titles at Phoenix.
Firebird International Raceway, just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, was the site of the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. In Pro Stock Eliminator, the battle boiled down to 2 cars for the Winston World Championship title. The defending champion, Bob Glidden, was being challenged by Warren Johnson.
Bob, of all of your world championships, this may go down as the toughest fought. 2 races left, about a 2-round lead over Warren Johnson.
Well, we've been fortunate enough, Steve, to have 6 world championships. This one is far from over. Warren has really been in the lead most of the year. I'm sure he's been working hard to prepare for the last 2 races, and he'll be ready come race day.
Any strategy at all involved here? Maybe try to qualify on the same side of the ladder as him, maybe try to draw him first round and get rid of him. Anything at all there that you used to do those sort of things?
No, our philosophy after the Atlanta incident has been to come to each race and try to win a race. Well, we've been fortunate enough to win 4, I think, of the last 5. So we came to this race just to run this race and hope that we come out of it with the Winston points lead.
At what point do you really start to get worried about no chance for that world title?
After the final round of the last race, I think that'd be about where to worry about it. But 2 races left, and there's really about a 500-point deficit at this point in time now, 200 points per round. It's really of no concern at this point in time, other than the fact you'd like to be ahead. But our Rosenbill's running well enough at this point in time that, yeah, I believe we can overhaul them. You know, as you know, I mean, there's so many things that can happen in this type of racing, as witnessed early in the year, you know, with Bob's crash and so forth. We certainly don't want anything like that to happen, but with the hole shots involved and as close as the cars are running and so forth, anything can really happen.
And it happened to Warren Johnson in the 2nd round of Pro Stock Eliminator. He was racing against Darrell Alderman when Alderman pulled one of the more brilliant driving jobs of the event. He left the starting line very, very quickly, well ahead of Warren Johnson. Johnson in the Oldsmobile unable to catch Alderman at the finish line, and that put Johnson out of competition for the day. As the shadows lengthened over Firebird Raceway, Bob Glidden had a chance to extend his lead in the Winston World Championship points chase. He was racing against Dempsey Hardy in the Pontiac. Both drivers took their time about staging. If it was a psychological battle, it was lost by Dempsey Hardy as he red-lighted, left the starting line too soon. Bob Glidden, the automatic winner, his 51st win, and most importantly, a very valuable increase in the points lead over Warren Johnson in the World Championship chase. The Funny Car World title was up for grabs at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals. Kenny Bernstein had the lead with Mark Oswald in hot pursuit.
Kenny, 2 races remaining. What do you have to do at Phoenix to go into Pomona world champion again?
Well, I think a couple of things have to happen. We've got to come out of here at least with the same point spread that we have going in, 1,156 points, and then I think it would be over with, or do better. If Mark Oswald was to go out in the 1st round and we were to go 3 or 4 rounds further or win the race, it would be over with. So it can happen here, but more than likely, our luck, the way it's been all year, it won't.
You know, a couple of times this year, you had problems in the 1st round and left the door open for him, and he was unable to drive through it.
Well, more than a couple, 3 times exactly, and he did drive through it, and that's why it's such a points race today. We can't have that failure of losing in the 1st round here and having Mark win the event. If we do, it'll be a brand new ball game at Pomona.
Well, if you stay with him round for round, will you go to Pomona with still a chance?
It'd be a very slim one. We'd have to set both records in top speed, low ET, the whole deal. He needs to go out early at this race or we're pretty well finished.
But it was not to be. It was not Kenny Bernstein that went out early, but Mark Oswald. In the 2nd round against Johnny West, the Candies and Hughes car went up in smoke right off the starting line. West won the race, but that put Mark Oswald out of the points competition for the World Championship title. The final round race between Kenny Bernstein and Jim Head just put the icing on the cake for the World Championship. Kenny Bernstein wore the big number 1 on the side of his car throughout the 1986 season. It will remain on the side of Kenny Bernstein's car as he won not only the Fall Nationals title, but the Winston World Championship title for the 2nd year in a row. Bernstein with an overpowering victory over Jim Head at the Castrol GTX Fall Nationals at Firebird Raceway. Don Garlits and Darrell Gwynn have been racing all year for the World Championship title.
2 races to go. Do you have a big enough points lead to take that world title for the 2nd year in a row?
Well, it's still mathematically possible for Darrell to take it, but he'd have to do an awful lot of trick things. There's only really realistically about 2,460 points left, of which I have 1,580 of them.
And Darrell may have inadvertently not done himself a favor when he set both ends of the record at Texas. He put them so far out of sight. I doubt you can do that. I know you can't do it at Phoenix and probably not at Pomona.
That's right. It would have been smarter to have set that record not quite so high and quite so low and use that kind of as an ace, you know, being he is capable of setting it. But it's been set out of sight. I don't think we'll see any more records this year.
You're confident you'll carry the number 1 in 87?
Well, I'm not going to make that statement. We've got a good shot at it right now.
Anytime you thought you had him down, he just bounces back.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Indy had our name written all over it. Dallas had our name written all over it, and he still got me. I don't know. He's incredible. I'll tell you, sometimes I think I got a handle on the situation, the race, this and that, and there's old Garlits stomping through the field, and there he is in the final. And I really thought that Texas was ours, and that's not the right attitude to have a lot of times, but I don't know.
Don Garlits was unable to lock up his World Championship title quest at the Fall Nationals as he ran into a stopper named Larry Minor in the 2nd round of Top Fuel Racing. Minor just dominated Garlits all the way down the racetrack and by over a car length won the race. Both drivers, though, had difficulty in stopping. The racetrack somewhat short. They ran off the end of the track and into the sand area. Garlits stopped his car just short of a puddle that was created by several days of rainstorms throughout the Phoenix area. Of the 3 points leaders in the professional categories, Garlits was the only racer to fall early in competition. He had a decided advantage over Minor at the starting line, but then some apparent problems set in the middle of the course, and Minor was able to power by Garlits by some 0.15 of a second, and Minor recorded a 5.49 second elapsed time and won the race over Garlits, putting the points leader out of competition at the end of the 2nd round. Minor in the semifinals fell in a close race to Dick LaHaye, while Darrell Gwynn, in his effort to gain ground on Don Garlits in the World Championship points chase, put away Joe Amato. That set up the Fall Nationals Top Fuel title, Darrell Gwynn against Dick LaHaye for the 3rd time this season. Night had fallen over Firebird Raceway, the lights were on, and you could see the header flames standing off of those nitro-burning engines as the 2 drivers brought their cars into the staging beams for the final race. 2 of the most consistent competitors throughout the entire 1986 season on the starting line at the Fall Nationals, with Darrell Gwynn considered to be the favorite based on his performance. But it was not to be as Darrell Gwynn left the starting line too soon, the red light indicating his disqualification, and for the 2nd time this year, Dick LaHaye won a Top Fuel title at an NHRA national event.
Well, they turned out the lights because the party was over. Kenny Bernstein repeated as funny car world champion. Don Garlits and Bob Glidden could not hold their victory parties yet, but both went on to the Winston World Finals extremely confident.
The Los Angeles County Fairgrounds in Pomona, California ended the 1986 season for the NHRA Championship Trail almost as it began on the same quarter-mile racetrack that hosted the Winter Nationals. While a lot of attention was focused on the Winston World Championship points chase for Don Garlits and Bob Glidden, one racer had an outstanding weekend. Shirley Muldowney had debuted her new car at the Winter Nationals with a 5.47 second elapsed time. Then troubles through the middle of the season prevented her from living up to that performance potential. But at the World Finals, Shirley and her crew proved that they definitely have it all together, as an outstanding 5.42 second elapsed time in qualifying propelled her to her best time ever.
Shirley Muldowney, who has been totally frustrated for 2 qualifying days. Whatever changes your crew made, Shirley, to bring this pink car around worked a 5:42 and a good speed, 2:67.
Quickest and fastest for me. I'm really proud of that.
Those are career bests?
Career best. My guys are great.
The huge crowd at Pomona, estimated at 42,000 on Sunday, paid homage to Shirley as she returned to the pits. She made it all the way to the semifinals, losing to Joe Amato. In the Krager Weld Wheel Classic held on Saturday, a race within a race, it was a repeat of last year's final. $30,000 went to the winner of this race, and it was exceptionally close as Joe Amato in the near lane raced Don Garlits. Last year, Joe Amato won the race. This year, Don Garlits had the whole shot off the starting line, but the race was won by virtue of his quicker reaction time. Don Garlits taking home $30,000 in the Krager Weld Wheel Classic. The World Championship points chase in Pro Stock Eliminator was decided in the first round when Bob Glidden won this race against Lee Dean. In fact, it was decided by a red light start as Lee Dean left the starting line way too early. And that gave Bob Glidden an unprecedented string of victories in the Winston World Championship race. 7 titles to Glidden's credit.
Well, Bob, you've won a lot of world titles, but this one has to be especially sweet because it took such hard work on the part of an entire family. Nothing was ever easy for you this year.
No, Steve, nothing has been easy. But I'll tell you, since the thing in Atlanta, it took us 3 or 4 races to get back running like we thought we should be. And since then, we've been on just a roll, a hot streak. And it's been incredible.
After Atlanta, in your wildest dreams, would you have believed we would be having this conversation right now?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I think I made a statement to you at an earlier race. There was not a possibility of us winning the Winston World Championship, but it happened.
Of all the world champions, Glidden's road to the title was by far the rockiest. He struggled through the first half of the year, initially trying to sort out a new car, and then recovering from his Southern Nationals mishap. He finally made it to the winner's circle at the Mile High Nationals, and then proceeded to win 5 of the next 6 races. This is his 7th world championship. No one has won more than 4. Glidden's incredible career includes championships in 1974, 75, 78, 79, 80, and 85. Helped by wife and crew chief Etta and sons Billy and Rusty, Glidden has been the dominant force in pro stock racing. His career began in 1972 when he left his job as a line mechanic at an Indianapolis Ford dealership. He holds the record for the most consecutive wins, 9, and is tied with Don Prudhomme for the most wins in a single season, 7, a feat he accomplished in 1978 and 79. After the way Kenny Bernstein dominated funny car racing in 1985, many people figured him an odds-on favorite to repeat in 86. However, things don't always go according to plan. Bernstein spent the first half of the season being plagued by little problems. However, by the Spring Nationals, Bernstein and Super Crew Chief Dale Armstrong seemed to have things sorted out. And although he lost the speed record to Mark Oswald, Bernstein was still the quickest and fastest funny car down the quarter mile. He became the first funny car to go over 270 miles per hour and the first into the 540s. Bernstein began racing in his native Texas in the 1960s. After a brief retirement to build up a restaurant chain, Kenny returned to full-time drag racing in 1978.
In the Winston World Championship chase for Top Fuel Eliminator, it was a first-round victory by Don Garlits over longtime competitor Gene Snow that gave Garlits an unprecedented 2nd Winston World Championship in a row, a total of 3 overall.
Well, that makes it official. Don Garlits becomes the first driver to ever win back-to-back NHRA Top Fuel titles. Congratulations.
I'm glad it's over. Now I can get on with the business of winning this race.
What a year it's been. 270 miles an hour. You accomplished some goals.
Been a good year. 86 was great. I hope 87 can live up to it.
No one has ever won back-to-back world championships in Top Fuel before Don Garlits. But like most things Garlits sets his sights on, he accomplished it. Garlits also became the first person to go over 270 miles per hour, a goal he accomplished in his innovative Swamp Rat 30 at the Gator Nationals. Garlitz had an easier time repeating in 1986 than did either Bernstein or Glidden. He led the points chase from the Gator Nationals on, and although Darrell Gwynn challenged him late in the year, Garlitz was never seriously in danger. His career spans 30 years and an incredible list of firsts. Garlitz won his first NHRA World Championship in 1975, becoming the first person to go over 250 miles per hour. After a brief retirement in the mid-'80s to build his museum of drag racing, Garlitz returned to competition at the 1984 U.S. Nationals. His victory there was followed by a win at the Winston World Finals. His performance over the past 2 years make it clear why Big Daddy, at 54 years of age, is the most feared racer in Top Fuel competition.
One of the great stories to come out of the 1986 season in Top Fuel racing was the competition between the old man and the kid. 25-year-old Darrell Gwynn racing against Don Garlitz not only in the final round at many events, but also throughout qualifying. At the Winston World Finals, they met in second-round competition. Gwynn enjoyed a performance advantage, but he did not need it as Big Daddy Don Garlitz had a very rare red light. For him, it was only his second red light in 2 years, but it put him out of competition after a great season and another Winston World Championship. In Pro Stock Eliminator in the final round, the surprising Ronnie Manchester met Bob Glidden. Glidden had already won the World Championship. He wanted to end the season with a victory, and he did it in resounding style as Glidden defeated the Pontiac of Ronnie Manchester for Bob Glidden, his 52nd career victory.
What a perfect way to cap a season. The Winston World Finals is yours.
I'll tell you, Steve, this has been another one of those storybook years. We started out with the bad season, and as we went on, it just got better and better and better, and you know, it ended up just like it's been the last 6 or 7 races, just near perfection.
In Funny Car Eliminator, Billy Meyer made his third final round appearance of the season when he raced against the reigning and new Winston World Champion, Kenny Bernstein. For Meyer, it has been a season of peaks and valleys, perhaps best exemplified by the U.S. Nationals, where first he exploded and destroyed the body on the car, then made it into the finals to lose to Mike Dunn. Here he raced against Kenny Bernstein and watched as the world champion set a new track record of 5.56 seconds to win the race.
No, it was good. It just hooked up and did its thing on Budweiser, Motorcraft, Kangaroos, and Dale Armstrong and crew again. A super job for a great year. We're just glad to be part of all this, and to our fans especially.
We were glad to be part of it, too. Congratulations.
Anytime, Steve. Thank you.
Darrell Gwynn's one racer that was quite happy that 2 NHRA national events were held on the Pomona Quarter Mile. He won the Winter Nationals, defeating Connie Coletta in the Top Fuel final. At the Winston World Finals, it was Darrell Gwynn against Joe Amato. Amato, having lost the day before to Don Garlitz in the Krager Weld Wheel Classic, was trying to make up for that defeat, but Gwynn was not to be denied. The 25-year-old Floridian used the performance advantage that he had enjoyed all weekend long to pull out a victory over Amato in the finals. The margin was just several feet as the crew for Darrell Gwynn, reflecting their enthusiasm for the young man's 4th win of the season.
Well, I'd like to say that I've raced some tough competitors today, including Joe, LaHaye, and Garlitz, and I'm just happy to race these guys, much less beat them.
Congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
In a season that had been marked by incredible drama and record-shattering performances, perhaps it was fitting that for the first time in history, the Winston World Champions in all 3 professional categories were repeat winners. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long for Drag Racing 86.